Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Plaster, the founder of Emergency Physicians Monthly and the host of EP Talk, the podcast where emergency physicians come to talk about things that are important to us. And today I'm going to be talking with another emergency physician about an issue that is incredibly important to not just emergency physicians, but to everybody. And his name is Ron Elfenbein. I'll let him talk in a minute, but I want to give a thumbnail of what happened to him. He can give you the details, but if you only watch 2 minutes of this, you need to understand what happened to Ron. Ron's an emergency physician who started an urgent care, a very forward-thinking kind of thing to do. When the COVID pandemic occurred, they were treating COVID patients with the most recent and up-to-date treatments, and were doing quite well, having a huge impact, and was rewarded for it through recognition by the state, by the medical society, and everyone else. There was a problem though, and that is he went on national television and talked about it. And it was a problem that I think that we'll get to, that he actually threatened the availability of vaccine by promoting the possibility of another therapy. And that would be a death knell to an emergency use authorization for a vaccine. So after having done this for a while and being very successful at it, he was indicted for fraud. Now, we know a lot about fraud. Look to Minnesota. These are billions and billions of dollars in U.S. taxpayer money that has gone to medical and other kinds of institutions where nothing occurred. There was nothing of the sort in this way accusing Dr. Elfenbein. All this was really boiling down to a simple dispute over the code, whether the billing code was accurate or whether it was, quote, upcoded. Okay. We have this all the time in emergency medicine. We know that every emergency physician here within my voice knows that people argue about, is this the right code? We'll talk a little bit about that, but that is not a criminal offense. That's a dispute, and generally speaking, it's a civil dispute. But in this case, Ron Elfenbein was indicted, tried, and the jury was considering a 50-year jail sentence. Let that sink in. I know murder charges that don't get 50 years. And this was a dispute about ostensibly coding. Ron, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and dig into that, and we'll tease out the facts that I want to bring forward. But Ron, tell us a little bit about your basic undergraduate education leading to your training.
So I went to Cornell University and graduated with high honors from Cornell, and then went to Syracuse for medical school. State University of New York Health Science Center in Syracuse. It's now called SUNY Upstate, but it was called SUNY Health Science Center in Syracuse. And then I trained at Johns Hopkins, where I did my emergency medicine training and served as chief resident my final year. While I was there, I won a bunch of awards. I was actually the only resident in the history of the program to receive federal funding, about $600,000 from NASA, to help develop airway management principles for the space shuttle and space station. Okay. Which was pretty fun and pretty exciting. And I did a lot of work with the United States Secret Service when I was there. In fact, I spent the entirety of the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City as part of the Secret Service contingent, providing medical care for the 5,000 plus federal agents out there. We got a full background check, FBI, everything. We had unlimited access to everything while we were out there, and it was an incredible experience. But I did that while I was a resident.
You're a highly trained guy from a good program who has done a lot of amazing things before you started the
Thank you.
I mean, I'm just telling you that I'm community hospital trained, and you're major university trained. So I just want to point that out simply because it's to say that you knew what you're doing. Okay.
I like to think so.
Okay. So you practiced emergency medicine for several years. You and I practiced together for a while, and then you started the urgent care, and then take it from there.
In 2016, I started my own business because I'd always wanted to be my own boss, and I always wanted to, I'm entrepreneurial spirit and just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But I never actually worked there clinically. I always had providers that I would hire to work there.
Sure.
So then in late 2019, what was going on in China,
Yep.
I started to see the writing on the wall, despite what the CDC and everybody else was saying, it's not coming, it's not coming. I said, of course it's coming. I mean, they're boarding up cities and they have tanks in the streets with their guns pointed into the city. They wouldn't be doing that if this wasn't serious. Of course
Right.
it's coming to the United States. So I started to prepare as best I could. I started to get my hands on whatever PPE I could find. I started to getting testing supplies. I worked with somebody to develop intubation boxes, which are these Lexan boxes that
Yep.
fit over
We all
patients so you
we
can
all know
intubate
what
them.
those are. Yep.
And I had a manufacturer start manufacturing them. We set
Yep.
up a website, a GoFundMe, and we started shipping them out free of charge to any emergency room in the country that wanted them.
Go
We
back
shipped
there.
out like 40 of them,
You did them free of charge.
free of charge,
Free of
free of
charge.
charge.
I want to note that.
And
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll keep
and
moving.
and we and we shipped them out. So then, the world shuts down, right? And we were the only game in town because we had access to PPE, which, by the way, I shared. I started to give it to nursing homes. I gave it to other doctors. I gave it to a friend of mine, a cardiologist in New York, was a cardiologist. He got drafted to work in the ICU because they didn't have enough intensivists, and he was literally wearing a hefty bag. I'm no exaggeration. So I, at
I
my
know.
expense,
Okay.
took a ton of
I
PPE
yeah.
and I sent it to him, and he wrote me back a
Right.
note. We all thank you so much. And then he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I not contaminate myself? And I had to go through all the protocols with him because he wasn't getting any help. So then I wrote an ebook on COVID and how to survive COVID, and I gave that away for free. I never charged for it. Talked about what to do, how to survive, how to wash your hands. I mean, all the basic stuff that we take for granted that most people don't know.
Yeah.
So we became the de facto kind of testing center for Anne Arundel County, and then in Maryland, and then pretty much the entire state. And we grew from one site where we had about 6 employees. During the height of the pandemic, we had 8 sites, over 300 employees.
Okay.
And we
Stop
were,
there for just a second. Okay. We're going to step back a ways because I think there's something that happened prior to that that I failed to ask you to mention. Okay. And we'll come back to all the testing sites and all the things that you have done. Prior to that, one of the things that you and I share is what you ran for public office.
oh, yes, yes.
That
So
that is an important point here, okay? Because this is Maryland. This is a deep
yes,
blue state,
blue
Maryland.
state.
You and I know what this is all about. I ran for Congress. You ran for several offices, and in each case, you did very well. You did very, very well. You were a
Thank you.
popular candidate and almost won. And so that's the background. You're politically active.
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. That's very true. So I ran for state Senate. And actually, I think to this day, I still hold the record for fundraising as a Republican challenger. I
Wow.
raised almost $1 million to run for that Senate seat. And
Wow.
I came within a few hundred votes of winning, beating a popular 30-year Democrat incumbent. And in fact, it was so close that the next year, the legislature redistricted it and just literally drew the lines at my front door.
Wrote you out.
So I was districted out, so I could not run for that seat again. So yes, a lot of politics here, and even to the point where when they indicted me, my partner was a sitting state delegate, Republican state delegate, who then they tied to me, saying, "Look, he works with a fraudster," and he ended up losing his seat over that.
Wow.
So you
Okay.
really can't get away from the politics here.
Right.
But yes, you're
That's what I want to lay out first. Okay.
no, it's a great
You're a
point.
highly trained physician. You're a highly trained physician who was able to see the handwriting on the wall what was coming with the pandemic, prepared for it, helped people, both the civilian population as well as the medical population, to treat and be prepared for it. But you had this bad actor. You were a conservative politician in this state, and for our listeners, you can call me a conspirator, or you can just log those and say, doesn't that impact the case that occurred later? Now let's pick up again. You're at multiple sites. And at those sites you're testing, but you're also.
Well, we started testing,
Mhm,
and that was the initial thing because that's all there was. And we
mhm.
would tell everybody, we follow the protocols. To everybody, as soon as we would test everybody and say you have to isolate, you have to, be sure wait for the PCR results. And it was 5 days, it was 10 days, then it was 7 days, then it was 5 days of isolation. But anyway, we followed all those protocols. We would have every patient do that. We followed every patient up. We had follow-up phone calls with all of our patients, and at our height, we were seeing 1,000 people a day.
Yeah.
We were so busy that one of our urgent cares It sits on Route 3, which is a major highway
Been over
in Anne
there.
Arundel
Yep.
County. It's
Yep.
4-lane highway.
Hmm.
And we were so busy that we opened at 8 o'clock in the morning. People would line up at 4 a.m. We had to hire off-duty police officers, and it would be the line was a mile down the road. I'm not exaggerating.
Hmm.
We clocked it a mile down the road. And we had to figure out how do you deal with this? How do you handle that? I mean, this was unprecedented. We'd have fights in the parking lot. We had people had to go to the bathroom because the wait times were ridiculous. So we had to get porta potties. I mean, all these things that you would never think about was just crazy logistics. So when the monoclonal antibodies became available, I was a very early adopter and an incredibly outspoken proponent of them. I thought they were the best thing in the world, and they really were. I mean, they really are. It's incredible. The efficacy, the safety profile, everything about them was just amazing. So I logged in as on the state website as one of the providers for it, and I started saying, "Well, we got to do this." But we were actually, I think, the only non academic affiliated facility to offer this. And in Maryland, I can't speak to other states, but in Maryland, the procedure and the process was incredibly onerous to get patients infused. Any doctor would basically had to log into some website. Then it was a 3-page document you had to fill out, probably take you 30 to 45 minutes. Then you had to print it and fax it, which didn't make any sense, but that was the procedure. So nobody was getting these miracle drugs. So I said, all right, well, how do we fix that? So I set up a call center and I said, I went to all the ERs and I went to all the primary care offices I could find. And I said, give this to your patient. If they test positive, have them call us. We'll take care of all the paperwork. We'll qualify them. We'll make sure they qualify for it. And we will talk them through it. And we will take care of all that work. You don't have to do anything. Well, very quickly, for obvious reasons, we became the largest supplier of monoclonal antibodies in the entire state,
Okay.
bigger than Johns Hopkins, bigger than University of Maryland. We were infusing 500 to 1,000 patients a week, and we had to come up with how to do that because there was no protocol for setting up an infusion center, which we set up in volunteer firehouses. We
Okay.
rented volunteer fire homes, houses, and we had to set this whole thing up. And we did. And the federal government actually reached out to me at Department of Health and Human Services. They said, "You're really good at this. We want to open up a site at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, where the Washington Redskins, the then Washington Redskins, play
Well,
football.
well,
Could you do this for us?" And I said, "Of course." So they paid for everything. Uh, we opened the site up in partnership with them and with the Maryland Department of Health. We formed a partnership, and the three of us ran the site. I mean, I ran it, but they were like our partners.
right.
And I said to them, I said, we should really be testing here as well. And they said, we don't want to do that. We just want to infuse. And I said, look, we could become the model for the country because we can take what I call the test to treat. You take somebody, have wait in their car while their test results come back. If they're positive and they're symptomatic, you take them right out of that car, put them right in the chair, and you cure them right then and there. And they said, "Oh my God, this is incredible. What a great idea." And that model became the model and the blueprint for the entire country.
Okay. Jump to how did the medical community respond to the efforts that you had done?
Well, so we were doing a lot. We were going into nursing homes. We were doing all sorts of things that no one else was doing, and the medical community was very much behind me. I mean, I was trying to. I was on TV all the time. I was just trying to be out there and trying to look. I mean, I think during a time like this, you can either step up or you can step down. And I really, really took my oath seriously. And I said, I think it's time to step up. And I was doing whatever I could do to help my community and help my state. And the state, the state doctors and everybody else was behind me. I mean, I got indicted and I still got awarded the Medical Society's Person of the Year, even after I got indicted for all the work I did during COVID. Our governor gave me a personal citation. The state legislature gave me a citation. And the Medical Society essentially named me its Person of the Year, even after I got indicted.
And who
So
was
I think that
who
speaks
was your
volumes.
character witness? Who was your character witness at trial?
The director of the Medical Society, who I'm very good friends with and who I've actually gone into business with
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So
But
I
but but
started.
I want to point out something though, and I want to go back to it. Okay. I want everybody to understand that if you have a feasible therapy in the market, it prevents someone from getting a company, a pharmaceutical company, from getting an emergency use authorization for a vaccine. Okay, that's why the hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin were fought so vigorously by
Yes.
people who were for vaccines. This was a war between big pharma, who was going to make billions of dollars. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not putting any words in Ron's mouth, but I'm saying this was a war between big pharma who's going to make billions of dollars off of a vaccine, and people who are pointing the finger and saying, I think that we could probably use other things that might not be that might be as effective or more effective. And you poked your head up.
And to your point, Mark. So I was, as I said, I was on TV. I was on, I was on CBS at least once a week. I was on Fox News. I was on Breitbart. I was on Newsmax. I was on Sky News. International news. So they were interviewing me all about COVID, and then I started talking about monoclonals, and I gradually started questioning the vaccine narrative. At first, I was very big proponent of the vaccine. I said,
We
"It's
all
great.
were.
We
We
have
all,
this incredible weapon." But I even said at the beginning, I'm like, "This is one more chink that we have, one more quiver in arrow in the quiver that we can now use to fight this thing." But I never said it should be
yeah,
the only thing we have.
yeah,
And then I gradually began to say, wait a minute, well, what about natural immunity? Why are we just like, what happened to natural immunity? This is the only virus in the
right.
history of the world that nobody has natural immunity to? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I started talking about that. And I started pushing the monoclonals because they work. And then the Biden administration did something that was unprecedented, to my knowledge, in the history of medicine. They first they federalized the distribution, and there was really no problem getting monoclonals. The way it worked was you log into a distributor's website. You had to have they give you a PIN number, and you log in as a distributor, as a provider giving this medicine, and you would order what you needed. And you had to attest that, yes, I'm going to use what I order. I'm not going to sell it. And yes, every week you had to go through and count how much you had, how much you used,
Yeah,
and then they would just send it to you. Well, then and there was no shortage. Then the government said, we're going to federalize it and we're going to control it. And all of a sudden, there was no shortage. You remember Florida couldn't get it. And Ron
right,
DeSantis actually had to go out and buy it himself
right.
with taxpayer dollars because the feds took it all. So I began to question that. And then I said, then they started using equity as a reason for distribution, as a model to distribute it. It wasn't based on need, it was based on equity. And I said, what is this? Like, you're gonna send it to a state that there's no outbreak because it's equitable, but you have a state like Florida where there was a tremendous number of people who
Right.
needed it and they wouldn't send it to them. That made no sense.
Yeah.
So I questioned that. And then they made a catastrophic decision in late December 2021. They shut the whole program down because there was an Omicron surge. And they said that uh, the feds, I'm saying they said that once the prevalence of Omicron reached 70%, the monoclonals were no longer effective. And they were going to shut the program down. And then in December, they issued that proclamation and said, you can't use this medicine. We literally had refrigerators stocked with the stuff, and it just was gathering dust. And I went on Fox News, and I went on Newsmax, and I went on a bunch of other right-leaning organizations. And I was really mad because we had to cancel, I think it was like 500 or 600 people that were scheduled. And I got all these phone calls, these horror stories.
Yeah.
My uncle's dying of cancer. He needs this medicine. I'm like, I'm sorry, we can't do it. And I went on Fox News and I said, they're going to kill people. They're misreading the data. Their models are all wrong. They don't know what they're doing. And I did say they're going to kill people. People are going to die. I said, this is the height of bureaucratic arrogance. And what they did was they took away, first of all, they got between the patient and the
Sure. Sure.
doctor, right?
Sure.
Then they took away your informed consent because it really should be your choice as the patient, even if you believe that it wasn't going to work, which of course you don't know that. Let the patient decide that. Why is
Right.
the government saying we're going to make that decision?
Right.
So anyway, I was very angry. I was very public about it. Went viral, got a lot of views. 2 weeks later, the government never apologized, but they said, "Oh yeah, we misread the data." Now, only the federal government could make a decision like this and screw up so royally and face no consequences. They said, "Oh, we misread the data. If the Omicron prevalence is only 20%, not 70%. They misread it by a factor of 50%, which is just astronomical. I mean, I don't know how you can, and I said, I don't know how many people, and then I went on again and I said, how many people they killed are dying or in the hospital because of this stupidity. I think that's the word I used, of these people.
Yeah.
So we started infusing again. Everything was fine. 4 months later, I'm driving my 3-year-old, at the time he's now 7, but my 3-year-old, to his gymnastics class, which I would attend with him every week, very close to my 4 children. And I get a call that you're being indicted by the federal government.
Yeah.
And like, for what?
Yeah.
And they said for fraud.
Okay.
And that's where this all started. And I was just imagine your life turning upside down like that. I mean, the worst experience I could ever imagine in my life we went through for now going on almost 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, give us the thumbnail because I'm still looking at the clock. Yeah, you can see me
Yeah,
looking
I'm
away,
sorry.
and I'm looking at the clock. We need to talk about the trial because this is probably one of the most unusual trials I've ever. I pointed up the fact that this is an argument basically about coding, and yet
Yes,
you had a criminal
yes,
indictment and you weren't actually even providing the care.
correct. I wasn't seeing any of the patients. And just to put this into perspective, even the federal judge adjudicating the case in a pretrial hearing, he said to the government, he said, "This looks like a case of shoot first, quote, shoot first and ask questions later," end quote, because they didn't do any investigation before they indicted me.
Yeah,
They got my name wrong on all the paperwork. They never interviewed any of my partners who are not doctors, but they're the business guys. They're the guys who ran the money and
yeah.
ran the business. And they didn't even look at the charts. They got them after they indicted me. So
That
the
stinks.
coding is based on the charts.
That stinks. That sounds like the command came from above. I'll be honest
Yes,
with you.
I agree. I mean
That's what it sounds like. I'm not saying it is, but that's what it
oh,
sounds like. It sounds like somebody said, "Go get this guy, shut him up." Okay.
so and we saw over 100,000 patients in that time frame of the indictment. It was a little more than a year. They looked at five charts. They never had a coder look at those five charts. They just had government attorneys look at those five charts. And we get to trial. I went to trial because I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, I'm not going to take a plea deal. I'm not going to put my hand up and commit perjury, which is a crime, by the way,
Right.
and say I did something I didn't do. And then go to jail anyway. So I'm going to fight this. And I'm facing 50 years in jail because each count has a 10-year sentence potentially.
Jesus.
So we go to trial because they didn't do anything wrong. And the first day of trial, the guy about whom the entire case is built around, their quote unquote expert, was so bad on the stand and knew nothing about any of the coding rules. I mean, zero. And my lawyers just tore him to pieces on cross-examination, not using cheap, slimy, lawyerly, tactics, but using the facts and legitimate questions. It was so bad, the judge pushed the jury out of the room and said, "Go to the jury room," called us up to the bench, waved his finger at the government and said, "What?" And this is the quote. You can pull it up on the transcripts. "What the hell are you doing? Where is the crime?" And the government said, "Oh, judge, you'll see it's coming. It's blah, 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 blah." Well, you better show me something because I'm about ready to throw this case out right now. Day one of the trial. He didn't throw it out. It went we took it to the end. And I'll tell you something. The jury found me guilty, which is just mind-boggling. But half the jury was asleep. The people in the jury were looking. They had eye watches on their phone. They were playing on their eye watch. You're not supposed to have that, but they were.
Hmm.
I mean, it was unbelievable and very scary. But I think what resonated with the jury was they two things. They made me look bad. They were like they literally put up my tax returns. That was the evidence. Look
Yeah.
how much money he made, and it wasn't even that much mony, but that was
Rich
their evidence.
doctor, rich
Right?
doctor,
Absolutely.
and that's we talked about this. This was a consideration where a character witness probably would have really helped you, but you thought your attorneys thought it was such a slam dunk that they weren't going to risk it.
They presented no evidence. It was so. I mean, literally. So their claims were we build at what's called a level four, an E&M level four,
Yeah, not
and
even a
there's a
level
reason for it.
five, not even a
No,
level five, which is
and and there's a reason for it. I mean, this is the 2021 AMA coding guidelines. I followed this chart, and we had a professional coder. He's the president, or past president of the Association of the American Association of Professional Coders. They never had a coder look at anything. He came in, he looked at hundreds of charts. The government looked at five, and he said all these charts they look great. In fact, some of them may have actually been undercoded. But beyond that, and I didn't do any of the coding. I didn't see any of the patients. We had nurse practitioners and PA see the patients. I wasn't seeing them. I was running around running 8 sites. So the government had no case. They literally they never said why a level four was wrong, and they never said what the right level was. They just said I was wrong. And to that point, when you're closing arguments, which just is crazy to me, the government gets to go last. And they're
yeah,
bringing the charges against you. You should get to go last, but they get to go last. So they said first, the guy gets up there, the prosecutor, and he says, "Jury, you may be asking yourself, what's the appropriate level? Should it be level four, level three, level two? It doesn't matter. You don't need to know." And this is a quote. "The important thing is he's wrong and he's a criminal." And then, because everything else had been just destroyed, all their arguments, he said, "Jury, does this make common sense to you? Use your common sense." The defense put up all these charts and they had an expert testify, and it's all very confusing. But just use your common sense. Does what he's saying make common sense to you? And if we had a chance to rebut that, my argument would have been, well, has anybody in here ever filed a tax return? Could you call the IRS up and say, "Hey, I did what made common sense. Of course, they throw you in jail because there's no common
Yeah.
sense here. And to speak to that, by the way, the AMA, I'm not even a member of the AMA, but they came to my defense.
Yeah.
They wrote an amicus brief to the court. And they even said, they're the guys who wrote the rules. And they said, I didn't break the rules, that the government is saying I broke. It's just, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
So the jury finds me guilty. Worst day of my life. I literally fell to the floor in a crumple and in a heap, facing 50 years in jail, driving home to see my kids to explain to them that, I'm going to be sentenced to some horrific, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
This amazing judge, Judge Bradar, who's the chief judge, by the way, of the entire state of Maryland, he was my judge
At what at
the
at
district
the
court level.
at the okay
The
above
district court.
okay
It's the district court. He's the chief judge for the whole state. He's the head judge on the federal level for the state of Maryland.
okay
He was my judge through the trial. He December, I think it was 22nd, it was right before Christmas. He writes a 93-page opinion. Now, the Supreme Court doesn't write 93-page opinions. A 93-page opinion completely tearing the government apart and not only acquitting me of all charges, but granting me a new trial in case the government appealed. And he said such things as the government did not carry its quote, the government did not carry its burden and no reasonable jury could have so concluded. I mean, there's a whole, you go through these 93 pages and just, I can read you a couple of these quotes. There can, of course, be no crimes if the defendant complied with those rules, end quote. The quote, the court, having closely observed the testimony and parsed the evidence in this case, concludes that the evidence weighs so heavily against the verdict that it would be unjust to enter judgment.
yeah
And I just want to put this into perspective. He took away a jury verdict, which judges never do. And he then granted me a new trial in addition to that. Very courageous, spent a lot of time on it, really thoughtful, 93-page opinion, completely destroying the government's case. So I'm a free man after that. First time in 3 years, I actually got a night of sleep. It was unbelievable. Like this weight just evaporated.
yeah
And then right before Trump comes into office, the vindictive Biden DOJ decides to appeal it. Literally weeks before Trump's inaugurated, just because they can. There's no reason to do it. The court's already ruled that this was a stupid case, had no merit, and regardless, just to stab me in the back one more time, and be vindictive. And they like their W's. They don't like to lose. So that's what it's all about. These guys want to win. So they appealed the case. So now I'm facing the prospect of a new trial in August.
okay. Now the question, of course, is I'm going to ask you the things that are on the minds of a lot of listeners, and that is, don't we have a new government? Don't we have a new DOJ? And you can address that. I think I know what the answer is, but go ahead and address that.
So yes, we do, and you're absolutely right. And thank God that we have a new DOJ. So what happened? The Biden people knew that. That's why they appealed it before the Trump people came in. Because once you start that ball rolling, it takes somebody to intervene, and you have to find that person. So when the Trump DOJ comes in, the new people, Pam Bondi, she's busy. She's got lots to do. There's thousands of cases. This is just one more case that's already in the process of being adjudicated. So, you have to find that person. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's my purpose in going public. I sat quiet for almost 3 years because my lawyer said, don't talk to anybody. You should be quiet. They're going to use it against you, blah, blah, blah. But I already testified, by the way. I also testified at my own trial, which they tell you not to do, but I did because I didn't do anything wrong. So that's exactly why I'm doing this. And I'll tell you something, Mark. You never know who's listening. I was on a podcast in December with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, and a couple of days later, I get a phone call from a United States senator. He said, "I saw your podcast, and I want to help you." And the next thing I know, I'm in his office meeting with him and 3 of his staffers, going over my case.
Yeah.
So you never know who's paying attention.
And this, I'm turning my attention now to our viewers, listeners, and that is part of the reason why we're doing this is because I want everyone to be aware of. These trials, regardless if they're pointless or not, are expensive because they require legal responses to even the wildest allegations have to have legal opinions and motions against it, even to get it knocked out. Those are expensive, aren't they, Ron?
Multiple millions of dollars expensive, which I don't have. And I gotta give props to my attorney because a lot of attorneys would have, you can't pay me, sorry, I'm leaving. But my lawyer, it's financially completely ruined me. And I couldn't work for 2 years also. And my attorney has been incredibly gracious. And he said, look, pay me what you can when you can. We don't need your money, basically. I mean, of course, they want to get paid, but
Sure.
he said, and I pay him a little bit every month. And I'm good for my word and I will continue to pay him. But, I didn't work for 2 years. And then getting a job after not working for 2 years is nearly impossible because number one, I got an indictment on my record.
You're right.
And the hospitals look at that askance. And then trying to get We're trying to get medical malpractice coverage.
Yeah.
Well, you haven't practiced in 2 years. Sorry, we can't cover you.
Yeah.
It's
No,
really
no.
hard.
Yeah, so I want the viewers to before we started, I wanted to ask you about a GoFundMe, or you said
Give, send, go.
Give,
But
Send, Go.
yes,
Okay,
it's on my website. It's www.ronelfenbein.com.
spell your name.
Um, www.ronelf as in Frank, en as in Nancy, b as in boy, ein.com. And I have a whole bunch of podcasts that I've done, a whole bunch of like past stuff. There's pictures. There's, my phone, my email's on there. If people want to reach out to me, please. I'd love to talk to people. I find it very cathartic to talk about this. As horrible as it was, and as horrible as it is, it's like a weight lifting off when you get to talk about this because it is so horrific. And look, yes, it's a sob story. It's terrible that it happened to me, and blah blah blah. But the reason that you should care is because it can happen. If they can do it to the president of the United States, and they can do it to me, they damn well sure can do it to you too. So,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
will. There's no reason for them not to.
right.
So kind of stuff has to stop, and I think we all need to band together and make them stop it because it's ridiculous
That's
and
right.
it's terrible. And at worst, at absolute worst, what you said at the beginning, Mark, was this is the case of a difference of opinion. That's it. And that's a criminal occurrence.
No, no, no. When we see what's happening in Minnesota, that the state government and even people above that, we're turning a complete blind eye to. And here we're talking about, qualified physician delivering care, and they're arguing about what the code should have been. We have that all the time. Okay. And I looked at your charts too, and I said I would have upcoded those. I would have put them as fives and not fours. Okay. I think a good portion of emergency physicians looking at what you guys were doing would have done exactly the same thing. And
And
just
you know what? They did. Sorry. We saw some data from a lot of other urgent cares. We're billing it the same way we were. And now that's not really admissible in court for a lot of reasons. I was actually,
right.
before getting on with you, was talking to my attorney about that. But well, I probably should. Can you cut that out? I probably shouldn't say that.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I will say that is true to a lot of other urgent cares. We're billing like that.
Yeah.
But to your point, Mark, um, there was no allegations that these were phantom patients. In fact, the government called 3 of the 5 counts. They were all patients. All 5 of these counts were real patients. They called them as witnesses, and they all testified. Yes, I got 2 tests. Yes, I got seen by a provider. Yes, they took my blood pressure, or my vital signs. Uh, Everything that we said we did, they admitted to under oath. And by the way, the things that they indicted me on, they said you didn't spend enough time with the patients.
Right.
They said you
That's not
didn't,
required. That's not required.
and right, it's not required. And they also said that these were medically unnecessary. Under oath, their expert, quote unquote, expert witness, the guy I was telling you about before, testified that time is irrelevant and these were all medically necessary. Their own witness, in a complete 180-degree opposite of what the indictment read.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up. You really can't.
I
And I
know.
feel like a crazy person talking about it because it sounds so ridiculous and so like you can't believe it's true. But it's all out there in this judge's opinion. I mean, it's like
You actually got found. You were found guilty of a crime that had the potential of 50 years in jail.
and
That is beyond imagination.
and they were asking for millions and millions of dollars in restitution, which they would have taken my house, they would have taken my cars, they would have taken. I mean, where would my family live? Where would my wife and kids be?
That's crazy. That is
Yeah,
that is absolutely crazy. So, okay, I'm at a point here that I want to make an appeal to our listeners. Okay, number one, the give, send, go, and help them out. Do what you can. Okay, that's number one. Number two, pass this around. Okay, everybody knows
please.
somebody. Pass this around, and this is not conspiracy stuff. This is real. Ron's a real guy. He's a quality guy. He was trained well. He stepped out and tried to meet the pandemic. And we as a community of emergency physicians and as citizens need to rise up and support him, not just financially, but also push the story out to our elected officials and as high and as broad as we can. That I'm asking that as a favor.
Please, and post it on social media. Post it on X. Post it on YouTube. Post it on whatever social media you choose to use. Truth Social, Rumble, uh, Instagram, whatever you want. But please post it. And on my website, I also have a change.org. It's free. It's an online petition. It's just one more thing we can then present to the Department of Justice to say, please make this go away. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm trying to find that person in the Trump world that can look at this objectively and say, look, it's already been adjudicated. And the other question is, not only is this an unfair prosecution, but is this a good use of taxpayer dollars?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many millions of dollars did they already spend trying to put me in jail? And now they're spending millions more.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's a very large case that's going on in the same U.S. Attorney's Office in Baltimore, that case with the Key Bridge. So they're going to be taking resources from that prosecution to prosecute me. And I also want to point out, Mark, that for the last 4 years, all this horror show that came out, not to sound political, but all this horrible stuff that you're hearing about the Epstein files was all in the DOJ's hands.
Yeah.
They didn't release any of it, nor did they prosecute anybody. People who are murdering children and raping little kids and doing horrible, unspeakable crimes, yet they chose to come after me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those were their priorities.
Yeah. Okay. Ron, thanks a lot. We could talk about this a long time, and who knows, maybe
Yeah.
I'll get a chance to elaborate on this a little bit more. But I want everybody to really understand that this is an issue. This is one of the issues of our time. Okay, a government that's been mobilized against us. Okay, I'm really not a conspiracy theorist here. I've been practiced 44 years, emergency medicine for 44 years. I would never in my entire life have imagined that this was possible. Okay.
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean,
And you're not a conspiracy theorist. Again, the chief judge, the federal. I mean, I think that's the most important thing to point out. Like, it's not just me saying this; it's the chief judge of the state of Maryland, a federal judge who, by the way, was an Obama appointee.
yeah,
Even he felt that this was ridiculous. And he went out on a limb to be so courageous to do something like that. So you're not a conspiracy theorist. You're not crazy. This is real world stuff. It's just mind boggling that this is the world we live in, but it is.
and I'm going to leave this hanging because the reason why what I said to you is I think that this has political ramifications. We all know that that COVID became politicized when it was potentially a multi-billion-dollar industry for big pharma. And I think that you'd ask yourself, why would the government waste its time and money going after you? You're a poster
But
boy.
nobody.
You're a
Oh
poster
yeah.
boy for the guys for a guy who's stepped up and tried to stop this pandemic. Your problem, your problem was you criticized the establishment position on the vaccine. And we still see this. We still see this. As physicians, we need to return to evidence-based medicine. There's too much politics going on in this right now.
Yes.
And I think that we need to start by correcting the problems, and this is one of them. Okay. And then we need to go back and start practicing evidence-based medicine.
And I will also say, I believe that this kind of thing sends a chilling effect to other doctors, right? I mean, who's going to step up the next pandemic if this is how they treat you? Again, I got an award by our governor. I got an award by by the state legislature, and the state medical society named me its person of the year. And the feds, the way they thanked me was to ruin my life. Like, why would anybody put themselves in that position? I have a dear friend of mine who's a plastic surgeon in Connecticut, and he used to take Medicare cases. He said to me, I lose money on these cases, but I do it out of the goodness of my heart because I have all these little old ladies and old people that get scars or whatever, and I try to help them out. Forget that. He's like, I'm dropping Medicare. I don't take insurance anymore. I won't go
Yeah.
anywhere near that stuff after what happened to you. Why would you put yourself in that position?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a good friend of mine from high school became a physician, and he did it on a public health service scholarship. And they sent him to pay it off. They sent him to an Indian reservation, and he got out there, and there were no patients. He wrote to me and he said, "Mark, there's only like 2 patients a week. They're not coming in. I'm sitting here and I'm fresh out of training and I'm not doing anything." And he started writing the public health service and saying, "I'm not going to stay. I'm going to go someplace else where I can be of some value." They said, "You must stay. You must stay and pay off your 4 years." He said, "I'll be brain dead and bald-headed and toothless by the time that happens." And so he left. He left the reservation, went to, I won't say where because it identifies his name, but he went to an urban area and started seeing exclusively Medicaid patients. And he was a hero in that town. In fact, they did a big spread on him because he was called the doctor who now still does house calls. He only went to the poor and he was doing house calls. The federal government came after him for violating his agreement to go to the Indian reservation and put him in jail for
Oh,
four
God.
years. 4 years. And so, I've talked to him after that. I said, "What'd you learn?" He said, "I played a lot of basketball, read the Bible a lot." He said, you know, and so we need to be aware of what our government is doing to us and why, and we need to be active. We can't be sheep. We've got to be active and don't be conspiratorial, but do be aware that there are bad actors doing things for malicious purposes. And this is if there's any take home lesson, it's that. Okay. So,
Yes.
Ron, thank you so much. We'll talk more. I'd like to get some reaction from our readers and listeners, and we'll have you back.
Thanks a lot, Mark. I really appreciate it. And God bless the United States.